Hi, my name is Dr. Felicia. I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling, where I focus on the treatment of OCD, spiritual abuse, and cultural abuse. Today's video is going to be in the topic of spiritual abuse, and I'm going to be discussing how spiritual abuse survivors can manage the holidays. For a lot of us, despite what we see on TV, the holidays can actually be a really stressful time, not only for spiritual abuse survivors, but for the population in general. And this is the side of the holidays that we don't really see on TV and in the media. And so, as someone who is navigating spiritual abuse, perhaps you're a survivor, you're perhaps even in the midst of spiritual abuse, a question you may have is, how do I deal with the holidays? That's a really important question. And in this video, I'm going to be discussing two challenges that people who are dealing with spiritual abuse can face. The first challenge I'm going to be talking about rather is that of maintaining healthy boundaries. For many people, they can feel like they're doing great with boundaries. And then when a time like the holidays comes around, they may feel a bit challenged in maintaining those boundaries. And they may feel tempted to renegotiate on those boundaries. When you see people smiling, laughing, happy, you see all these scenes of people, just seeming to be enjoying themselves, you may have this deep fear that you are missing out on something by having those boundaries. You might gaslight yourself and think, I'm being too critical, I'm being too picky, and having these boundaries. And that's a normal process to go through. For more information on this, I'd encourage you to watch my video titled, How Do I Deal with Guilt When I'm Enforcing Boundaries? Okay, so I go over a lot of that in that video. But when you are dealing with this, the temptation is to go back on those boundaries, question yourself, gaslight yourself into thinking that you are a bad person for having these boundaries, or maybe you just overthought everything that happened to you in the past and these boundaries are not necessary. And so, one thing that you can do in dealing with this is make a list of what you've gained so far with your boundaries. Okay. And before I go on with that, I would just like to encourage you that if you have found this information helpful, you're finding this helpful so far, please like, share, and subscribe. What this does is it helps YouTube's algorithm get this information out to other people, such as yourself, who will find this information useful. So back to what I was saying, make a list of what you have gained from your boundaries. If you go back to the video that I talked about, you will understand that setting boundaries is not an easy thing at all. You're going to deal with guilt and you're going to deal with uncertainty, regardless of the situation that you went through. It's normal. Think about it. The spiritually abusive environment does not reward people who are boundary setters, right? It's a behavior that is punished, that you're oftentimes ostracized for, shamed for. And so when you are doing something like setting boundaries, you need to realize that you're doing something new. You're doing something that you're not accustomed to, and it's going to lead to feelings of guilt and uncertainty. The mistake you can make is that by taking those feelings of guilt and uncertainty and assuming that there's something wrong or that you're doing something wrong and making a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, I feel guilty. Oh, I feel uncertain. I must be doing something wrong. That's not how you want to navigate things, especially as you are surviving spiritual abuse. Now, I'm not saying that being psychologically flexible, being adaptable, changing things as you go along the way is bad. It's not. You may decide that you want to change some things up with your boundaries, but you want to do it in a way when you are in control of yourself and when you are doing it with a sound mind, not just reacting to difficult emotions that are going to be there. Think about it. Even before you had the boundaries, you probably felt guilty and uncertain about other things as well. So just having negative emotions is not reason in of itself to just go out and renege on everything you've worked so hard to build up. So make that list. Look inside, be introspective, and look at what are the things that you have gained so far from forming these boundaries. And when you look at that, you can begin to assess, well, do I want to maintain these gains, or there's other gains that I want to get? You know, when you do that inventory, it helps you acknowledge your emotions, but also not be controlled by them in that case, especially when you're dealing with this overwhelming guilt, uncertainty, and this is fear of missing out. Okay. So the first challenge that I'm talking about here, that I talked about, is boundaries, right? And how we maintain those in the midst of a holiday season when we be tempted to renege on them for fear of missing out. The second one is sacrificing your internal sense of peace for a false external peace. And for more information on that, I would encourage you to look at my video on spiritual abuse and false peace. But one of the rules of a spiritually abusive environment is appearance over authenticity. And part of that appearance is having false peace. And so individuals who have survived spiritual abuse, or even in spiritual abusive situations, will say things like, when they've, brought up a situation, or when there's some kind of conflict, they're always encouraged to keep the peace. But keeping that peace, number one, is a false peace. And number two, it comes at a great cost to that person, right? They're sacrificing their own internal sense of peace. And with the holidays, when you see all this imagery, and not just imagery, but hearing maybe from other people who are in healthy environments and thinking about all the things that they're going through, and all the things that you might, feel like you're missing out on, you may be tempted to sacrifice your own internal peace for a false peace, right? For that appearance over true authenticity. Okay, but remember what the spiritually abusive environment thrives on. It thrives on control, and it thrives on fake appearances. And so when you're tempted to do that, I would encourage you to ask yourself, what would be the consequences if I went along with this false peace narrative, right? And let's say you are tempted to sacrifice your internal sense of peace. What would be the consequences that you would face now, and then maybe in the future, right? Think about that. Don't just only think about now and having a knee-jerk reaction to what you're dealing with now, but think about the future. And when you think about that, ask yourself, is this worth it for me to sacrifice my internal peace for a false exterior sense of peace? Okay. And only you can answer that question. These are just exercises and questions that I would encourage you to ask yourself as you go through this process. Okay. So the first challenge, reneging on your boundaries. Second one, sacrificing your internal peace for a false sense of peace. These challenges are there all the time, but they can be especially prevalent for people during the holidays. Okay. So think about those things. If you would like to get some guidance and some therapy along your spiritual abuse recovery journey, go ahead to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, where you can book a free consultation with me. Okay. And I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. What are some of the challenges that you are successfully navigating during this holiday season? Or maybe you just need some help, and I'd love to build a community here where people can help and encourage one another. Okay. So may your day and your holiday season be filled with genuine peace and authenticity. All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.